All right, here we are, podcast number 8 with Luis Fernandez. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Good night, I guess. It's nighttime. I don't know why I said today.
It's okay. It might come out in the morning. Who knows when this comes out?
Yeah, who knows when you put this out?
Yeah, right.
We don't even know.
You have been mentioned in the podcast more than anybody.
Okay, good.
And
probably the only podcast that exists. That's good.
We mentioned you because you in one episode we talked about how you gave us the feedback on the album and how we gave it to a bunch of people, but you were kind of the only one who broke down everything. Even us broke us down to
Yeah, well, I for me, it's like I guess when someone asks me to look at something, I mean, obviously music is not my chosen art form, but when someone asks for my opinion on something, generally speaking, I want to give them a real, I know how it is when you share your art, right? It's scary. Your ego is on the line. There's a lot on the line. You're nervous. It means a lot to you. So when someone asks you to do that, it actually is a great honor. I treat it like a great honor. I wouldn't say yes, I'll look at your album if I wasn't going to actually give it a shake, right?
Yeah.
People do that
awesome.
stuff. You're like, read my book, and then they don't read it for like 5 months. Did you read that? Mine? Like, no, I was going to do that to you guys, and it happened. It just so happened. Like, what's really funny about your album as well is probably one of the first times in a long time I've actually listened to an album top to bottom in a long time, like intentionally with like nothing else. Like I was sitting in a dark room. I was sitting at the theater. It was an awesome experience because like when would I ever listen to any music like that with that kind of like, oh, I'm going to listen to every detail. So I actually got a lot out of it. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, it's funny you say that because we were just talking about that with a couple other guests where we were saying that how albums are almost dead. That's not what at least that's what is supposedly not wanted anymore, right? They want singles, they want EPs. People don't want necessarily a full album. They don't have time to sit down and listen to a full album, right? They want a single. They want to hear that hit and really move on. So it's interesting you said that because it's true.
Yeah, but when you guys, one thing that struck me too is that you guys were actually looking at it as a full album. I know you guys have gone other directions with how you've broken up since, but you wanted me to look at it like it was complete, and you actually gave it to me in the order. Like it wasn't like random order songs. You guys meant it to be in that order, so I took that very seriously. So yeah, and I guess you guys went in a different direction, right? That's not.
Well, I'd say we went in a different direction to be able to deliver it, but at the end of the day, our goal was to give it out as a full album, which is still the full intention, right? Is to put it all back together as one full album. And I mean, like Andrew said, you did break it down, broke us down, but it was the best thing we needed at the time. It really was. We've only heard ourselves and that was it. So we needed somebody else to really break it down and make us really think of what direction we wanted to go, which I think I would say, Andrew, right? Like that was one of the reasons why we decided to split it out a little bit. And it was good advice that you gave us in terms of what do you want out of this, right? And what direction?
Which is an important thing to ask. And I think that I'm kind of cheated a bit. I mean, as you guys know, I've in my life, I've dated some musicians. I've worked closely with musicians. So, I don't think I've plugged that out of my ass. Like a lot of that stuff that I was saying, I actually heard secondhand through other people's discussions about their albums and their music. And it seems like the general consensus was like, really break it down, really try to like focus on the songs that you think are your best and really just make sure they get heard. And I likened it to comedy, so many times in comedy, when you were in a stand-up comic, you do the same, you do that material so much. Like it's not one and done. You don't write jokes generally and then say, I'm never going to touch that again. So it's almost a waste of your art if you don't take the things you did well and try to really get them in front of an audience. Because, in my experience, sometimes I feel like, oh, I did that play, but like how many people saw that play? Like 200 people? Like that's not, that sounds like a lot of, that's nothing. That's like a drop in the hat, especially when you talk about online. And so, yeah, the more that people can listen to those songs, you want people to listen to the songs. You know what I mean? So,
no, absolutely.
So yeah, Lewis actually runs Unit 102. He's part of the owners of it, operators.
Well, I'll correct you there.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's the Assembly Theater now.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to,
correct me. Yeah. So I have a question about that theater. Okay. The struggle we're kind of having out the gate is getting people to kind of give a shit, and you're not owed anyone giving a shit. But when you making and like creating and writing all these shows and putting on these shows, and I guess at this point you guys are way more established. You guys are all over the place in papers in Toronto and stuff. And
Yeah, that's you say that, but that's actually really that's an outward, like, that's not the truth necessarily, right? Like I think that when you do the stuff that we're talking about, art, whether that's music or, you know, I feel like success is measured in small incremental steps. It's not, you know, some people, sure, overnight now you're a viral sensation or something, that does happen. But ultimately, the worth of what you're doing is not measured in like big leaps. Sometimes it's the small gains, right? Like I say I'm established, and certainly I'm not honest. Like I've done a lot of work to be where I am. That still doesn't necessarily translate to like financial success or stability. These things don't necessarily line up that way, and it's hard when, like, you know, I work so many jobs, and I still run a theater. I still do my work. I still audition. You know, it's hard when you're in the grind of it all to feel like it's worthwhile, because, like you say, people don't give a shit. Well, the truth is, even with the success that I have found, people still don't give a shit. It's not like you say my name or the work that I've done, and people go, "Oh, of course, that guy." Like no one knows who I am. Like, you know, do you really, as an artist, you got to take your mind off of. You have to see value in what you're doing now. I think, like, you can't always look for like what other people to validate what you're doing. If you guys like the music you're making, if you guys like what you're doing, and you're really putting your best foot forward, you know, I think that somewhere inside you can have your own best bullshit detector. You know if you're not doing that. You know if you're not putting the work in. So it's really up to you. It's really, I believe it's like a very much, it's like it's a mental state. Like you just want to make sure that you see value in yourself and what you're doing. Hopefully people will see it, but that may never happen. And let's be real. If you really think about art in like a lot of the people that we follow or have seen, like, you know, in textbooks and stuff, died far before they were ever recognized for what they did. And in fact, most often, I would say, the people who are recognized in the moment are not always the legacy people who will be recognized forever, you know? And some of those people don't get recognized in their lifetime because they're not doing what's popular now, but what will be one day popular. They were ahead of themselves, you know? So, I mean, with musicians, like going back to music, like some people do experimental music that everyone goes, fuck this is garbage. And then 20 years later, it's like, this was the sound that we have now. And they were doing it then and no one cared. So really, there's the only success you can really hope for is within yourself. That one that you know you're doing what you like. And when you guys listen to your own sound, go, I fucking love that. Then that's really what matters. Generally speaking, if you like it, it will translate, you know, but you have to be.
Well, and I think, and I'd say that's what we've done too. We've really celebrated our successes that we have had, right? I mean, who would have thunk that we would have been across the world in, you know, a month, really, of our single releasing? It's almost close to a month, right? Today, or you know, this week.
The 12th, not yet. Yeah,
the 12th. No, we're getting close. But to think that, you know, it's crossed over to Egypt of all places, right? And
crazy, right?
It's just crazy. And to think that I think our second most played country is the UK, and then the US, you know, pretty much on par with Canada. So it's pretty impressive to think, you know, that it's reached out that far. And I would say with theater, that would be pretty hard to do unless it was online, right?
Yeah, that is a big thing. It's actually, I just did a recent article that was posted on Facebook in I can't remember what publication right now, the Canadian Observer or something like that. Whatever, but it was an article that they asked us, you know, about what was happening in our situation right now, and yeah, it's. I forgot what I was saying. To be honest with you, I just completely.
So, like, I was just in terms of we're able to like put ourselves.
Oh yes, the reach of it. Yes, Peter. Yes. Thank you.
What's it like? For a second. It's okay. It's all good.
One of the things that we found was that we didn't translate quickly to the internet. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, oh, now we're all stuck at home. We're being expected to move our work from the theater stage to online. And that transition didn't always play out well. I mean, music obviously works well in this format digitally. Right. But yeah, what I do doesn't necessarily translate. It takes a lot more work to convert it too. So yeah, that was kind of a wake up call. I think that a lot of we'll just move that. We'll move it online. That's easy, and it's not easy because there's a lot of different factors to consider when you're doing that. So yeah, it is hard. Theater is a beautiful art, and it's an ancient art, but it's beautiful because it exists in a place of now.
Right.
You either were there or you weren't there, much like being at Woodstock or something. Like, these things exist, and all you have to really remember them is archival footage, maybe, or a pamphlet, or what's it called? The
program.
Program. Thank you.
Hey, no
Jesus.
problem.
I'm losing my words here. But anyways, you know what I mean? That's all that exists of it, right? So it is unto itself what makes it beautiful, is that you either went or you didn't. So even for me, considering what we're talking about, yes, you feel you did fuck all. At least with music, you guys feel like, oh, I have this recorded.
There's almost something tangible for us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something that we can follow, unless, like you said, unless you're putting on shows and you see ticket sales and see, people in seats, you've got really nothing.
Exactly. It's a really hard thing to wrap your head around. A lot of people can't handle that, and that's why they move to film or something. Because art, they're called art objects. Like when we create something that can actually be commodified, and like, here, you can have my thing I made. Like, this is the one art form that doesn't really happen, and that's why I like it too. Like, it's why I like it. Like, I have this really because some of the stuff that I do, I feel what doesn't even translate that well. In other forms, like some comedy is really about being in the room and oh my god, I can't believe he did that. Like, you can catch it on video, but it will never be the same as if you were there to see that thing.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because I know that I listen to a few comedians that have been on podcasts, and they say that this has been horrendous because you try to do something that's live or streaming and you don't get the reaction even from the crowd. And I'm sure in theater it's the same way. That crowd gives you it's no different than, I guess, an audience playing live. So you can't get that right now, obviously, the way things are. But for you especially, you do something, on video, you don't get the reaction even of the crowd to give you that motivation or whatever, maybe that inspiration to, feel the way you feel, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. It's a big part. I remember I was talking about, this is like not completely off topic, but I was talking about MMA with a friend, and he was saying how, because McGregor lost recently, and he was saying how he believes so much of his persona and what he feeds off is the crowd. Because he's such a
crowd. Yeah.
He's like one of those guys who's so cocky and he gets into it. And he felt that one of the reasons why he did so poorly is that he just doesn't have that energy that he normally draws from. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think that's a lot of truth to that. Nothing's worse than hosting an event and like saying jokes that have no sound. And you see these comedians they're doing stand up in those parking lots where cars are honking. Honking is not the same as laughing. It's like so abrasive. It doesn't even feel this thing. It's a different energy, right?
Yeah, because Burt Kreischer started doing that actually in Florida, I think, is where he started doing something. And until they finally said, fuck it. And actually, we're just on to a band in Miami. And they were like, yeah, we shut down for a little bit, but fuck it. We never really shut down.
They never shut down. No.
They definitely did not.
No. And we don't want to get you on that topic. I know you have lots to say about.
No, we won't get political on the podcast. I want to talk about art and beauty.
Beauty of it.
Have you guys had people reach out to you saying, "Hey, we really miss this"?
I mean, everybody misses it. I mean, we're all missing something, right? I don't think there's anyone in the world that's like, oh, I mean, maybe there's someone that's like, this is the fucking bomb. I love it.
Yeah.
I love being alone in my basement all the time.
Yeah, I was already doing that, man. That's awesome. No, I don't know. Obviously, yes, people are missing it lots. I mean, the audience that comes to theater and live music is very similar. They're people who crave that experience, right? Otherwise, why would they do it? I mean, they can get all their entertainment through their TV screen or their computer screen. So the people who love that shit really love that shit. It's sort of a vital part of their lives. So yeah, the people who are concert goers, who are theater goers, they're feeling it. And I've heard lots of people talking about that. In fact, I almost feel like people, by virtue of complaining about it so much, make it worse, right? It's like, I get it, it's bad. We're in a bad situation, but if you keep on posting pictures about how sad you are, like, remember this and this and that, it's like, why are you torturing yourself? It's not going to go away. So let's try to think of forward thinking and not dwell on it. Because I think a lot of people dwell on it,
So then I guess to follow up that, then, I mean, I guess the hope is that once it does come back, people should come back in droves. Really?
I think so. I think there will obviously be a period of like tipping your toe in the pool. Like, I'm scared. I haven't been out in a long time. Like, there'll be an awkward phase. But yeah, I think it's going to be gangbusters. Like, let's be real. Like, the boomers, the generation after World War II, obviously comparing this to World War II is ridiculous, considering how much more destructive. I mean, this has been destructive in its own sort of special way.
Yeah.
But we still have infrastructure. It's not like buildings have gone away. The places that are closed are still there if they, have rent, I guess. But you know what I mean? I feel like whenever there's a period of great upheaval, what follows that in peacetime, quote unquote, is always like booming times. Like, I can only imagine, like, as an example, working at the Rogers Center where I work, and I'm a vendor, been there for a long time. Andrew can tell you about that. But I know the first Blue Jays game back is gonna be wild. Of course
It's
it
gonna be
is.
fucking insane.
It's gonna be insane. So like for me, it's like it's weird. It's like right now sucks balls, but come soon will be a golden time. I think just a matter of like surviving this time now,
This, yeah.
mentally and physically, right? So
Has Toronto lost any theater? Like, have they lost venues?
we've lost venues all sorts. We've lost venues all sorts. We've lost restaurants. We've lost everything. That's the saddest. The saddest. I mean, other than of course actual death, life,
Right.
sickness.
Right. Absolutely.
The loss of some of the institutions of our city is staggering. One thing that happened to me, this is will relate back to my my theater, the Assembly. We got kind of lucky over this time because, I'm saying this out of my ass. I don't know names and stuff, but it's this woman Tori Urquhart, who's a great theater practitioner, and just so she's been a super amazing person during this time. She's like really rallied the troops and said, I'm going to talk to government, and I'm going to, these theaters need to be saved. And she's been like a hero during this time. And she had a friend who saved a number of music venues. So this does relate to what we're talking about here. It was like basically there's arts grants that go to musicians, that go to theater artists. And you guys should definitely, that's another thing we should talk about. Like, you guys should definitely apply for grants, because there is money out there for people to do the work that you guys are doing. And I've started to get on the grant train. It's a lot of work. It's boring as fuck. It's a lot of loophole and bullshit paperwork. But if you get like 10 grand to do your next album, it was worth it. And this happens. And it's been happening more in my life. The more you get tapped into doing this, and you know when the grants are due, the more you go, fuck it, let's keep on applying for these things. And I have a lot of problems with grants, because the government, basically choosing, gatekeeping art that gets money that doesn't. But there is money out there. And so basically, these art grants for musicians were on hold because there's live
nowhere to play. Right.
So the idea of this gentleman, I wish I had a name to tell you guys right now. Maybe in a future podcast to talk about it. But he basically said, hey, why don't take that money that you're not using for artists that can't do this work? Why not give it to these venues to stay alive during this time? And
so that way there's somewhere to fucking play.
And they successfully did that. And so she said, well, why don't we do that for theater? Because theater has money that's not being used from the government. And we successfully did that. And so what we didn't know at the time was that it was only for 2021. So we did this back in like October, and we're like, oh, that money's not going to come for months. Like, it's not going to help us in the short term. But we got it. And now we're sort of working on that now. How do we get that money? How is that going to work? But we actually got that. So
awesome.
There are people who are working very hard to save our venues. And I think that we should all try hard to save our venues, and definitely, look on, if you have I will say this to anyone listening out there in the podcast, if you have a restaurant, a store, any kind of establishment, a favorite venue, and then you haven't seen it in a while, I'd look up online to see if what's happening with them. And there are so many GoFundMes and different ways they're trying to stay afloat. If you love someplace, go and make the effort to keep them alive.
Yeah, go support it. I mean, and that's the thing, like, we, even with Andrew and I, we're doing this obviously for the love of music, and we don't necessarily need the monetary support at the moment. Obviously it'd be nice, but at the same time, there's a lot of other places that are hurting, a lot that need support, right? That can't get it, right?
Absolutely. And that's very kind of you to say.
Huge.
But I would say as well, I mean, it would be lovely if you guys could, you guys have jobs. I'm sure you love them.
Right.
This is being recorded. They're excellent employees. But you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I mean, the more you can really, because I think what artists need to understand is that doing this is work. People think it's so, you must have a great life because they're so miserable in their own lives. But the truth is that to make the kind of work you want to do, it takes a lot of work, a lot of self-belief in yourself. And so for me, it's like the more you can give yourself the freedom mentally and the time to still have your family and your loved ones and be a proper human being, but work on this with intention and not have to split your focus, the better. I work 5 jobs to make my life work. And COVID has given me one beautiful thing. It's the clarity to just focus on this. And that's a beautiful, I mean, it's not going to last. And certainly I can't last in this situation, but it's almost in a way a nice thing. I work so many goddamn jobs. It's just so nice to just write and be an artist for a little while,
For a little while, yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew and I have said that too. If it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be in this spot, I don't think. Right?
Not this far along. Not this far along.
Not this far along, that's for sure. And we had a little bit of extra time, but then once, September hit around for me, essentially was back to normal for myself. But but at the same time, there was opportunities that, we wouldn't have explored, even this podcast, right? Being able to connect to so many different people. It wouldn't even cross my mind I don't think if we were in the situation where you couldn't go out and do things. It was just
Yeah.
another different way
Yeah.
to go out and say, hey, let's go connect with artists that, we would normally, go and play a gig and maybe talk to a couple bands here and there. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be around the world, but it certainly makes your brain think, go, hey, what else can we do?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, you're right. There's some silver linings to all of this. At the
There
end of it.
always is, and I
There
try to
always
look
is.
on those things. If you try to find those things, generally speaking, it helps deal with anything, right? But I would say too that what a great thing. I would say don't lose those practices. You guys starting this up and making these inroads to talk to other artists and to meet other bands, like obviously this is going to hopefully be a practice that continues well beyond this situation in time, right? Like,
And we think so. Like most of the feedback we get and most of the love that we get are from other artists. Sorry, I guess it up. This is like are from other artists who we were able to get through Twitter, through whatever. They're playing our stuff. They're the ones going and retweeting our shit and like getting their people to listen to us. So it really gave us a chance to think like, hey, like I know people who are like, that's so cool that you do that. And then that's the last I hear from them. Right. And these other strangers who just happen to have the same art interests we have are there pimping it out and like sharing it, putting their stories and shit. It's like,
but that's like I just sometimes I get mad that my friends and family don't do that more often. But the truth is that people love what they love, right?
Yeah.
If you're a band and you love the music, then you're going to support the other bands that do the music. Not everyone in our lives. Social media is a funny thing because it's part business, part our lives, part of communication with our family and friends don't have to. They have no obligation to necessarily pimp our music or our stuff. You know what I mean? They don't have
or care really.
And it may not be their taste, and it may not be their taste either, which is another big thing,
and
right?
in fairness, I'm not fucking pimping their shit either. It's not like I'm like, oh, I really love the knitting that you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, it's sort of like we put too much pressure on getting the people in our lives. Like, screw those. We want the people who love the music. You want the people who actually like the band. Like, for me, that's more real fans. That's what I call them. Because when you're at a theater show, yeah, oh, there's my dad. He came. Thanks, Dad. And even that doesn't happen. But like, oh, there's my dad, and there's my guys from work that came. There's like people you expect to be there, but fuck that. I wanted to be like, I don't know anyone out there. They came to see this piece of theater, and that's why they're here. Like, I love that. Like, much as I want that support, like we should as artists try to go beyond what's the expected people. Like, they don't have to do anything. They're not even fans, really. They're your friends, and that's probably the best. They're not the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and you may catch a couple of them that will enjoy your music, which is fantastic. But I think you're right, and I was saying to Andrew, and I was saying to other guests too, that Twitter seems to be the one where we don't know anyone on there for the most part. There's maybe the odd one, but realistically, it's strangers, and some of them are starting to be fans of the music, and that's unreal to think of that we haven't even played a gig, and there are people that actually just truly enjoy the music. And like you said, that's just a real fan, and it's an unbelievable feeling.
It's worth its weight. And honestly, when I get those things, they happen few and far between. But we're at work or doing something completely not this world, and someone's like, "Hey, like, yeah, like, were you in this thing that you did?" Like, yeah, like, oh, I love, thank you. And in that little moment, that little like acknowledgement, sometimes is the whole. That's like everything. It's like, oh my god, it made my day. Like, and that's
right. It makes it all worthwhile.
Totally. And honestly, I know it sounds cheesy, but like even one person is like touched by it, and then you've done something, and that's really the truth.
So at this point of your life in acting, you've been doing it for so long. Before a show, how do you feel about it? Because I remember when I was playing live in music, before shows, and this is before social media, I was a mess because I was calling people, "Are you here?" And I was like worried about the crowd sizes. We had certain venues that were like, "Get this many people, you have to if you want to get paid." And then at the fact that like I had to go on stage, it was like the last thing I had to think about. And then it was like just the whole day was anxiety. At this point, how do you feel about that?
Well, that's a Fernandes thing, maybe, because
But
no, but what you described as well. What you described as well is also not fair to you, because I believe when you're a performer and you're about to go perform, you should not be thinking about the numbers. You should not be thinking about where's the other guy in the band. In theater, you don't do a show without a stage manager. You need someone who's on top of that shit. Because when you're about to go on stage, man, you're not of your right mind sometimes, and you got to have someone who's on. I would hate going forward. You guys might want to think about that. You should not be when you're about to go out there, you should have someone else taking care of that stuff. And I know that sounds ridiculous because that's a very privileged position because not everyone has a team but when you can get to a place to have it, it's worth its weight in gold because I am no good to anyone before I go on a show. And my family, my girlfriend, anyone. Generally when I go on stage, especially with a play, it's a little different sometimes in music because a play might run, 7 days in a row or something. One day when you do a one-off, I love one-offs because then you get all that energy into one performance and you did it, it's done. But when you're doing something every other day, which is what theater is like sometimes, you're not going to always be mentally and energy. The energy might be a different place. Like you might have a bad day at work or your girlfriend broke up with you. You're supposed to go and do Macbeth again. You're supposed to be Macbeth somehow tonight. And last night you were on fire, but today you're not feeling it, And to find that consistency in yourself demands a certain, like an athlete would, I suppose, a certain mental game, And so when I'm doing a show, I try not to. I mean, if I can, I have to still work and do shit, but I really try to avoid all things. I just try to keep myself zen. I try to get to the space where I'm performing 3-4 hours beforehand, so I can like roll around, get comfortable in the zone. Like I can't relax. Probably like 5 minutes of showtime. Even when I'm in a show that I've already done it like a million times. I know I got this. It never goes away, that nervousness for me. It never does. I'm nervous up until I'm doing it every single time. Something magical does happen when I'm up there. It all fucking goes away, But beforehand, no, I'm a mess.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that what you said because one of my best shows I ever played ever, and it was the most party show I ever did, was in Toronto at Lee's Palace, and before the show, my cell phone got stolen at McDonald's, and I couldn't call my band, and I stopped there because Jason, my guitarist at the time, was like, "Can you pick up some Sprite for the vodka we have? We had vodka, get some Sprites, get some drinks, and that's we'll go to the venue." And so I just went there to buy 2 Sprites, and I put my phone down on the counter, and someone stole it. And McDonald's, they wouldn't help me look at the cameras. They said, "No, you didn't have a phone, sir." And I was like, "What do you mean I have a phone?"
I hate when people do that.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm not crazy.
I was like yelling at people in the store randomly, but I had to go to the venue. So Jason luckily came to the McDonald's because he knew I was there. So we got to go. So we went to the venue. I couldn't call anybody to say, "Hey, show, it's on at this time, whatever." We're about to go on stage, and the police called Jason's phone. So I left the Jason's phone as my contacts. I had no phone, and they said the guy behind me in line stole your phone. And he was with his family, 2 kids. They came from the X. They had big dolls, and he took my phone off the counter. And at that point, I was like just drinking, and it was the best show I ever played. I was like,
it's funny you say that because I know you.
I'm a mess.
If something gets stolen like that for me, it burns my. I can't let it go at all. So I don't even know how you cleared. I don't know how you turn that energy into good performance energy somehow.
I just drank, and then, but it's like because I was so pissed off at the phone being gone that I think the anxiety of the show was kind of like
gone.
And then I went on stage, shirt off. It was such a party, man. And I looked back at that show and I was like, wow, I don't know how I pulled that off because I was like so pissed off for so long leading up to it. And I never like going to the venue before showtime. We have sound check, and sound check's usually at like 5.
Yeah. When I say going to I agree with you. I don't like because sound check's a bit different. Sound check's like you got to be because sound check is kind of like doing a tech run, and in a play you get that out of the way usually on the opening day, and then everything's set, right? And doing those like cue to cues, like learning the like it's so boring that part, and what, take that back. And so for real, that is not what I'm talking about. When I say get there, I mean like in your secret space, like not
mental space.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing. Yeah.
I used to hate that.
No, that's.
Because I used to go. It'd be like 5 o'clock, and then you do like a 15-minute sound check, and then they're like, "Okay, well, we'll see you at 9." And then like all my gear's there and stuff. I'm like, "Oh, I got to drink now," because I'm in the venue thinking I have 4 hours to kill till I go on stage.
I think musicians, but that's got to be. I mean, that's a common because they call
Yeah.
you guys so early, right? Like even it doesn't matter if you're the last band or the first band. Everyone's got to be there before anyone arrives. So it's like,
Well, and I mean,
you
if you're the first band on, you're the first one doing sound check, right?
yeah. But what sucks though, if you're the last one on, you're the last one doing the sound check, and you're
Yeah.
gonna be there all night long.
All night long.
Still, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fun at all. So what do you have? What do you have? We have how much time? 7 minutes left. So
7
what,
minutes or
what do you
so.
have going on? What's going on with you? What
I mean,
you?
there are quite a few things. I'll plug some things. We've got this thing
Yeah.
called the Woo Fest at the Window of Opportunity Festival. It was my brainchild. It was something we were going to do in October because of COVID. We have a big storefront window over at the Assembly Theater, which is at 1479 Queen Street West, for those who might want to rent. The assemblytheater.com. But anyways, at the theater, we were going to do this thing. We have a big window, so we were going to do some window work. Like, oh, you could walk by and there'll be something happening of interest in the window for passerbyers. I thought this is a good idea because we can't do theater proper, but this will be a nice thing for the neighborhood. Didn't really work out because it kind of coincided with the rise of schools opened and numbers were getting bad, and we couldn't get the permits for the outdoor space that we needed to do it officially. I'm of a mind, well, I'll do things even unofficially, but doing outdoor stuff, doing it officially is good for your own sake. So we get shut down, or complaints or police. You just outdoor stuff requires a little bit extra stuff. So that didn't happen. So now we're doing a virtual version that will be going all throughout February online at our site. You just go to the assemblytheater.com. And it's called Woo Fest. You can just click on there. We'll be uploading all these artists that were supposed to participate, including myself. We were going to do a thing called Hindsight as well. To be honest, it was supposed to be a sketch comedy show about 2020. Like it was Halloween. So the idea was, the horror of 2020, and just go through all the events comedically, kind of like a Mad Magazine style sort of thing. That didn't happen. So we started to do it from home. And I was like, well, maybe we'll just film this. We'll film this comedy thing. We'll call it Hindsight is 2020. They're all sketches about 2020 and how shitty it was. And then we couldn't film that either because they had a stay-at-home order. So we couldn't even film in person. So now we shot the whole fucking thing from our computers like this. Like I've actually done scenes like this, and we're going to cut it together, and we're going to put it up at the Woo Fest. It's a shit show. Like it is what it is, but we're going to present it. But it's all good because it's all like the starting place. We're hoping to do it again. Woo Fest will happen this spring. What I'm working on right now personally is we are trying to find outdoor venues with these variants and shit. Like who knows if it's going to work out. But my initial idea was we were going to try to find an outdoor venue. I've got some connects to the island. I'm hoping to get the island. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm trying to get an outdoor venue so we can do some stuff in the summer. And I'm hoping you guys have me back on the podcast when that stuff does happen.
That'd be absolutely
for sure.
Yeah. I feel that's a problem too with these podcasts that we're realizing that we're almost short on time with our guests.
It's good though. It's good. It really it made me, when as soon as I saw the timer, I'm like,
I know it makes you think, eh?
Yeah, it makes you think. You got to get in the game, right?
Yeah.
But this is great, guys. I wanted to say, like, great work. Obviously, this is a little praise for Chasing Records. This is a great idea. This podcast. It was your idea prior to even us discussing the album, and it's working out. You guys have had some great guests, and I'm glad to be a part of it. You can always, I'll always come back if you want me. And Nathan, I gotta say, like, I've met you only a few times. Andrew, I know.
Right.
But this is a great format for you. I feel like in my past dealings with you, you're somewhat of a quiet, reserved guy, but here this is kind of like your zone.
Yeah, I don't know how this has turned out to be my thing. I don't know if it's doing some sort of video announcements daily or what, but I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed podcasts. So I enjoy watching them more than listening. I like the visual more than listening, but I know that some people just like to listen, right? But I appreciate that. Yeah, but I mean, we have to thank you too, though, because we've given you a shout out on here, but just to like talk to you again the second time around. Like I said, if it wasn't for your feedback, and we had a couple other people too that went down and really stripped it down, the album and the songs, but it really made us think about our music and each song. And there was a song, and we've talked about it earlier on, that we ended up just wiping it away because you know what, you were right. You had to really think about it and go, is this really what we want to put on? So, I know we both truly appreciate it.
I'm glad to help, guys. I mean, I love that you guys are getting serious and getting it done, and it's really inspirational, and I'm happy to help in any way. Yeah. And you guys, it was always there. You guys always had it. You just need some people to like say, "Hey, let's do it."
Wake the
You got
fuck
it.
up.
Do it.
That's what
Yeah.
you said. You
Yeah.
said wake the
Exactly.
fuck up.
Why?
With these last 2 minutes, I just want to get your take on the Jays real quick, because the other time you were brought up on the podcast was because we were talking about when the Jays signed Springer, or when Jays signed
Yep.
Springer.
And then they had Bentley, or and then they did.
Well, for 5
Yeah.
seconds they
Yeah,
had it.
yeah,
They
yeah,
had it,
yeah.
and then they didn't
So they
have
had Brantley and then gone.
What's
Yeah.
your
Then we've-
prediction?
yeah.
What's your prediction with 2 minutes? What is your prediction? And then we'll come back to this in the future.
That's true. Yeah, that's exactly.
What is your
No, I
prediction?
gotta be okay. I'm gonna go as quick as I can here. I know my prediction is that the Jays are gonna be better than they've ever been in the last few years. I mean, they're only gonna get. We all knew with this young squad that they were only gonna get better. They're at their very beginning of their careers, and they've already got a ton of upside and talent that we know is gonna. And look at guys like Bichette. In some cases, like Bichette, they're already exhibiting what they can do. So knowing that, unless there's injury, I think there's nothing that's going to happen but better and better and better. And then you add pieces like Springer to show that you're actually serious about contending. I think they'll do great. I mean, the only thing I can say about them is baseball to me is all about injury management. It's all about keeping healthy on the field, and that's really the only factor. Because the Yankees look good on paper, but they're also a lot older squad in some respects, and they can get if they're not at full capacity, we can take them. So I'm always the eternal optimist when it comes to Blue Jays, but there's nothing but excitement to become forward. I didn't talk about this at all in the podcast. I worked at the Rogers Center, formerly the Sky Dome. I still call it the Sky Dome.
So do I.
Since 1995, right? So for me, this is last summer, my first year since 1995 that I have not been at the stadium doing baseball.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. So for me, like, oh my God, like this season's so exciting to not be working in.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. Yeah.
Do they break 90 wins before you leave? Do they break 90 wins?
I don't think so, but they'll be in the low 80s, and maybe that'll be enough, because people always say this 90 wins thing, but like it really depends on.
And I'll be honest, the 90 win thing may not even come to effect because they're talking about shortening the season.
Yeah,
so
never mind.
It might not matter anyways.
Yeah.
If they get 90 wins, guess what? They're number one, baby, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. But I look forward. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't think baseball was going to exist last year, so I'm just happy to have it.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks so much. What's your Twitter handle? You might as well say that right now before we
at Parkdale Power Ballad. Or no, at
That's
MC
your personal one.
Yeah, sorry. At MC Nuff Said is my handle on Twitter. At Parkdale Power Ballad is my handle at Instagram.
All right, buddy.
Perfect.
Thanks so much. We'll chat soon.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll see
guys,
you.
take care.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.